Welcome to Season 9 of CX in the Wild, where we venture beyond the ordinary, exploring the untamed edges of experience creation. These are the stories of dreamers and doers, those who craft connections at the crossroads of humanity and innovation. Now, let's join Dennis on the latest journey.
Welcome back to CX in the Wild. Wow. In Dubai, our guest today, Subhi, is a pioneer in Dubai. First customer experience platform in the region, competing against some of the major players around the world. It's going to be a fascinating discussion on my part because, as everyone knows, I have a strong belief that Dubai has a unique ecosystem for creating CX that is both pioneering but also scaling faster and better in, let's just call it, the second era or third era of CX around the world. We see this in CX standardization around the world. We see the confluence of government, education, public and private sectors here working collaboratively more than anywhere else in the world. And with all that said, Subhi, welcome to the show this morning.
Good to be here, Dennis.
Thank you for traveling over to this little Airbnb for us to have this conversation.
My pleasure.
Let's talk about who you are and what's keeping you busy these days. It's a great intro. I always start this podcast with, tell the audience who you are and what's keeping you busy.
Awesome. Well, my name is Subhi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Kanari. We're a customer experience insights and analytics technology platform. Started off in Dubai about 10 years ago now. And yeah, we've been busy helping the region measure, manage, and improve CX. What keeps me busy kind of within the business is obviously there's a product element to it. So building the platform, managing the team, growing the company. And then there's the customer aspect of it, which is actually a lot more exciting. That's where you get to meet CX professionals, help them on their journeys. We have a unique approach where we want to be the partners in their growth and not just a vendor or a software provider. We don't just come in, implement the solution, train up the team, and move on. We really like to become an extension of our partners' customer experience team. They're, like a tech partner of sorts. And as you probably know, customer experience is a journey, right? And the tech is just one piece of that journey. So implementing the right technology, getting things integrated, making sure everyone has access to the data, insights are being shared, and teams are leveraging that to drive improvements or in CX. There's, the tech is just one part of the puzzle. And then as you go through the various phases of the customer journey with a client, you start tackling different types of problems. Culture is a big one. How do you, especially for businesses that weren't started with let's say, a very customer-centric DNA. It was very transactional, very commercially driven. As they say, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And Dubai has been booming for many, many years and continues to do so. But basically when business is good, money is flowing, people never really paid attention to customers so much because there wasn't the need to. But now as things get more competitive and as CX has come more to the fore, there is this focus on customer experience. And so imagine trying to now undo or introduce something, a concept of, let's say, customer centricity or customer focus that really hasn't been there with people that have been in the business for decades, doing things in their own traditional way and thriving at it, right? The numbers do the talking. How can you then convince them that, hey, by the way, there's this customer there that we now need to start focusing on, and that is going to help us to the next phase of growth. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey, but that's a longer approach into who I am.
It was a perfect sort of encapsulation of the market, the trend, the purpose, the evolution of CX. Just listening to you describe your history, I want to touch on a couple of things that I like to share on the podcast, things that might help you on your journey.
Awesome.
You're only the second person who's really articulated it quickly and succinctly, but I think most people, when they think about it, they know it's true, which is I was speaking to someone in Zurich or Vienna, and they were saying you can spot a company that's ready for CX with one metric.
Okay.
And I was like, do tell. And this woman's super smart. She said, all you have to do is look at their profit margin. If their profit margin is, the bigger their profit margin is, the less likely they are to be receptive to anything CX oriented. Mm-hmm. And the thinner the profit margin, the more likely they are to need and want and to adapt.
Yeah.
And I think you said that. As competitiveness happens, the need for CX becomes paramount. And I'll tell you why I think it is. I define CX because it means something different to everyone else. Everyone. My belief is that CX is a business term that describes the global operating system for economics. And the reason I say that is everywhere in the world has customers and everywhere in the world has experiences. And anywhere CX truly done, whatever it touches, it can be a team, it can be a piece of software, it can be an organization, it can be a government. Anywhere customer experience touches something, it changes it from a hierarchy to a matrix. And what that matrix does is provides the tangible, the intellectual, the governance standards. It creates the design thinking that allows that piece of thinking to connect to other systems thinkers around the world. And so this is why I think you see CX being a true opportunity for businesses to do exactly what you said, which is find the customers that really need help, maybe discover where we have a blind spot, where there's customers that we didn't even know existed, which is sort of where my practice focuses. And I would say that the other interesting thing you said, which is in the US, we have tried. We've tried top-down CX. We've tried bottom-up consensus. We've tried co-creation. We've tried IT-driven success. Back office runs at it. And over the last 5 years, I've seen all of these horses leave the races and they come out of the gate. They look the same. You're like, neck and neck. Here comes service design. Here comes customer service next to marketing. Oh my God. Pulling ahead now is whatever it is. But what we found now that the horses have run a while is that the product teams are the ones that actually have made it around the first two loops. And the reason is the incentives in most hierarchies, organizations, top-down organizations, the incentives become less and less aligned as you go up. But the product team's mandate is to traverse all of the teams. And so in their, to your point, DNA, they have the culture and the fit to actually drive CX across an organization. So it's been interesting, and it really flies in the face of almost everything you Google about CX, but that's really what's happening. So here you are, you have a product, you're competing against some very big players in the world. You've been doing this for 10 years. You've certainly, over 10 years, honed a strength in business adaptation and the ability to product market fit in an agile way. What is the current point of view from in your mind where CX is actually valuable? Like, I know everybody will say my part of CX, but just from your POV and your product mindset and your experience, just today, where do you think in the next 90-day sprint, the best of the best are putting their efforts?
I mean, it's very different when you think about it from a regional perspective, right? So globally, CX practices are a lot more mature than in our part of the world. So when you talk about CX in the region versus CX elsewhere, there is a bit of a discrepancy. And I would say focus would be put in different areas. I think a lot of businesses in our part of the world are still waking up to CX, right? So building the foundations for successful programs and successful implementations. Elsewhere, things have been around for much, much longer, right? The wave had come earlier. Not to say that, you do have your stand-up companies that have been very customer focused since day one. And funny enough, without necessarily having CX programs, right? So you don't have to have a formal CX program to be customer centric and to build the business that way. But as I mentioned in my introduction, generally, at least from what I've been seeing in our part of the world, businesses have been commercially driven. And now there's this, they're waking up to being more customer focused. And so going back to your question, which is where where do we focus, or where should CX be focused? And this is kind of an approach that has helped guide us and bring us to where we are today, which is listen to your customers and listen to your market, right? The way we've built our company was very customer driven. And I was doing it from a software product perspective. You build what your customers are looking for. And so keep talking to your customers, understanding where they're looking to grow into, what capabilities they require, and then build out these features to support them on that journey. And I think it's very similar, that still applies now as it did in the very early stages of building our first version of the product and developing it over the years. So to this day, we listen to our customers, understand where they are within their CX journeys, look at what the next potential challenges for them are, and work with them on that. I'll give you a simple example. We have a client of ours that has a high target for the number or percentage of customers that they want to engage with. Let's say it's not a high, they don't turn around a lot of customers every month. And so from a statistical perspective, it's important that they listen to a large percentage of their customer base on a monthly basis. As a result, what happens? They end up supplementing traditional experience measurement approaches with outbound calls from the call center, right? So they have agents that make calls to customers that haven't responded to the traditional survey approach, because they want to hear from as many of them as possible. So what that means, and with making these calls, speak to any researcher or any business that does phone interviews, you have to be very objective. Don't introduce any bias from the agent's perspective. Just ask the questions, collect the answers, and that's it, and move on, right? To me, that seems like a terrible waste of time and resources, right? We have technology and AI that can potentially do this job. So I never thought that this year I would be in a position to start thinking about how can we automate voice surveys, for example. But when given the situation, it seems like a really good opportunity, because you literally have people that need to behave like robots, to just collect the data, and without any emotion, without any value add from their side, they're literally making the phone call, collecting the data. That's perfect for automation. And so that's something we're looking into. We're looking into how can we leverage AI powered voice to do this work on behalf of humans. Now, the question is how receptive the customer will be to it on the other end. I don't know. That's something we'll have to test. There's a lot of factors to consider. But yeah, it's, again, going back to your point, it's really important to focus your efforts on what will drive the most value within your market. And I think the same applies to CX probably.
I listen to a lot of people on this podcast, and a vast majority are just brilliant minds. And then I have a few that are just like fluff. And it's interesting to dissect and listen to what you say using the buzzwords versus what a fluffy person might. And I want to break down for the audience a couple of key things that you said, because you're not fluff. I can tell from the way you externally process the question and the answer. Your buzzwords, the way they aligned, they're absolutely consistent with what I see as the smartest thinking in the world right now. And I'll tell you, you said so many things, you're a little smarter than me, so I'm having trouble keeping up with it all. But let me tell you a couple of things that I think will help you. The greatest insight I got in this world tour on bots versus humans, and AI taking over jobs and all of this conversation is in Europe. They're doing extraordinarily well at replacing humans with AI bots. Where I hear all these other conversations, but I'll give you an example. Frankfurt over indexes, they've been growing. They're outperforming most of the world in AI adoption at over 25% year over year. And it's in the financial sector. And they also over-index on B2B purchases of $50,000 or more by credit card. No human intervention. So what do they know that the rest of the world doesn't know? And this was the key insight. And I think this is one of the things I hope you test. It turns out in a lot of markets, and thank you for recognizing that every market is different, because you're absolutely true. But in some markets, what they found out is when a human encounters an automated voice or robot, or they detect for some reason, and they always do, that it's not a human, there is an instant barrier. What they found out in Europe is if the robot introduces itself as such, the human becomes curious and interested in the engagement. And so that just, hi, I'm Dennis. I'm an automated robot. I use the latest technologies to attempt to have this conversation with you. I hope we can get along. I think when you introduce it that way, it's just so interesting, the shift in the human approach.
Sure.
So I know you want to jump in. So on that, but I also want to say, the other thing is, you said, I asked you over the next 90 days, what's the focus? What should it be? And you said both going back to basics, but also listening to your customer. And I think anyone could say those buzzwords. But I also agree with you in that the ability for us to listen, I don't think that's what you meant. I think what you really meant, and this is just a language and English thing for my audience, I think what you are saying is let's call it the acoustics or the hearing of your customers. There is a real improvement there. It's sort of like going from mono to stereo to surround sound to immersive in your headphones. That's where we're going. And I think the quality of what we can hear from customers is intensifying rapidly, and your platform, that's exactly where your platform lives. So the quality of the listening is really what you're talking about. Am I right there?
I mean, absolutely. It's in terms of what we offer to our clients. That is definitely the case. I liked your analogy with the acoustics. You get more breadth of data and you get depth of data. And, beauty of systems is everything gets more integrated. And as systems become more powerful, it becomes easier and easier to make sense of all of this data, to organize it, to provide that 3D surround sound, Dolby version. What is it now? 12 or 9? I don't recall. But yeah, that is definitely the direction we're headed. But it's not easy, right? Just last week, I was having a conversation with another customer, and the quality of the data plays a big role, right, in being able to generate insights and do advanced analysis to make sense of what you have. If the quality of the data is not up to spec, or even worse, if the data is of high quality, but it's inaccurate, and you get that, hey, you get let's say a data set that's very consistent. All the fields are perfectly aligned. There's no empty spaces. But guess what? That row is incorrect because that customer is, let's say,
that customer is culturally out of context.
Not culturally out of context, but the actual data doesn't, it looks right? It's structured well, but it's incorrect or it's invalid.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example just to help you there.
Sure.
I say culturally because here's the thing, an example. In Japanese, there's a different word for hot, meaning temperature, hot meaning popular, hot meaning spicy. So each one of those is different.
Sure.
Now, if you have a row in a culture, in a data set, and hot, its context is wrong because of the culture or the affinity or the region.
Sure.
You've now got a data set that says everything is popular.
Right.
When in fact it's actually something entirely different.
Yeah, but I mean that applies a lot in a multicultural place like Dubai.
All over the world it applies. Everyone everywhere in the world is getting this wrong.
Sure.
I've seen this now.
And it's increasingly complex, but with the tools and technology that's available, it should also become progressively easier.
That's right.
But just going back to my point and making sense of data, the quality of the data is really important. It's a challenge that we've been facing for a long time, building a business in this space, in this region.
I think everyone struggles with it, and I think most people are more honest about the challenge and less honest, depending upon where you go.
Yeah.
Dubai has an interesting challenge, and I'll tell you, I met with some people putting a deal together here in the region, and of course I was in Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
High emphasis on Arabic. My skill set is obviously in English. I have no other language skill sets, to be honest. And they were like, why would it make any sense for you, Dennis, to be doing this work? And it's interesting how people encapsulate the work. We're not talking about doing work here. Mm-hmm. We're talking about making progress. In Dubai, there is enough English-speaking opportunities to create some progress. I'm not trying to answer the question of life, the universe, and everything. I'm merely trying to contribute my one piece of moving the needle forward. And I think that is easy for me to say. But in your situation on a platform, you're dealing with different levels of maturity and language sets. You're often dealing with a broad spectrum of educated to differently educated vocabularies amongst customers. And you're processing all of that data, trying to find axioms where there's an optimum analysis of the data. And so it
gets a bit more complicated. You can add two more dimensions to it.
Please do that.
Right? Which is you have the industry in which you're collecting the data, because industry has its own speak.
Oh my God, yes.
You talk about healthcare, it's a whole lingo, right?
Yeah.
Versus, retail, versus banking, versus insurance, versus what have you, right? So that's another dimension to the matrix. And then a more cultural one, which is becoming easier and easier to deal with, which is differences in dialect, right? So especially when we get into understanding what customers are talking about online or listening to social media posts, you talk about Arabic in Saudi is very different than Arabic in Egypt. That is extremely different to Arabic in the Levant, very different to Arabic in the UAE. So words that, as you said previously, in Japanese, words that mean something in one dialect could mean something else in another dialect. So platforms need to become smarter and more intelligent. Luckily, we have AI now that is trained on various different languages, nuances, and increasingly so on dialects, and that's going to help a lot. But even just 5 years ago, when you talked about listening to social media posts or trying to analyze and understand social media posts, this was a major challenge. And you had companies that were building specific models that were trained on a specific dialect and putting a lot of effort into that. Whereas now kind of the models available, hopefully over time we'll have that built in already.
I think in wrapping up our discussion, I want to touch on what I think was the most important thing you said about the next 90-day sprint or the future or the practice of this work. The idea that, and these are my words, not your words, but what you described is, you partner with your clients. And I don't think you mean you partner with your clients. What I think you mean is, here's other English words you would say. I would say you embed, or you join, or you collaborate, or you co-create. You are no longer a vendor, because companies that buy vendors or establish transactional relationships with solutions, it's almost like, I think of going back in time, where what they do is if you're a traveler across a long journey, they buy horses and they ride the horse and they switch the horse when the horse gets tired. Mm-hmm. And there is a new world where you can have a car that can go wherever, and you can keep refilling the car to continue the journey and a destination. Now, following my own metaphor, the roads didn't exist until recently. But I think that in 2025, the biggest risk to companies are those that, and we learned this already with customers, if you have a transactional relationship with a customer, they will have that transactional relationship with you and they will switch.
Very true.
Companies who have transactional relationships with their partners or their vendors or their resources will have the same outcomes, which is they will remove progressive efficiency, they will remove progressive innovation, they will create a deficit in continuity and their ability to have essentially a second pair of ears. So a company has a set of ears, and now a partner like yours has a second pair of ears, and combined, you have what you need to survive in the wild, which is you have surround sound. And if what you're doing is you're switching out your partner every time, you're really mono.
Yeah, 100%. You said it really nicely, and it's very correct. It's exactly how we have been able to progress with our clients over the years. And the other advantage to that is you also forget there's churn within the business, right? So there were times where a relatively senior person from the CX team left and a new person came in. And obviously there's a lot of knowledge and experience there that just went out the door because you don't have that handover anymore when there's a new person joining after the previous person leaves. But with us still being there, we obviously knew what happened earlier on in the earlier phases of the growth of the program. We have that expertise and we can then pass it along. And it lives on with the new person that joins the team.
And that's a perfect way to wrap this up because you create continuity by being a customer experience matrix opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You can lose a node, a senior leader, a junior leader, another piece of software. But if each of these pieces is part of CX and it's networked, you preserve a higher degree of probability of continuity, agility, and you interface with customers, and as you advance, more dialects, more languages, more cultures. So I wish we could talk about this forever, but we only have so much time. I just thank you for your insights and your perspective. Is there, obviously I do this also to help extend your voice out into the world. So all the links are there for people to get in touch with you. So we never need you to plug anything.
Yeah.
But is there one thing in our last few minutes that maybe I didn't touch on that you feel I should be paying attention to or the audience should know about? Do you want to have the final word?
I don't have anything else to add per se. I mean, it would be great to connect with others and get more perspectives, I guess, because we're always looking to do more, do better. So yeah.
What part of the world, if you had to pick one place in the world where you feel your solution is most interested and most curious about collaborating with another part of the world, what part of the world would it be?
Well, I'll tell you the area that I'm particularly interested in, that is Africa. I think it's very similar and comparable to where we were here, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago. And so I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of business, in terms of the stages at which companies are at, and the way, we've done great work here. I feel like we can do an equally good job there.
I need you to answer this question honestly.
All right.
I need a percentage. Just be honest, please be honest. What percentage of research about me and the work I'm doing did you do? 100%, 10%, 1%? Did you come in fresh to this? Just what percentage did you, I'm just curious because it'll give me context around and to respond to what you just said.
Active research, if you don't count listening to a few past episodes of the podcast, less than 5%.
All right. Perfect. So I am moving to South Africa in January. I'm going to put a home there for the year. I'm going to also still have my home in the U.S. and I think I'm going to have a place here in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
But I have long-term housing there because I've spent the last 2 years cultivating and building with the public and private sectors across the entire country of South Africa. And I am actively engaged in doing my small part in the transformation in Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, uniting public and private sectors, skills-based training, and advancing technologies. And it's my life's mission for this whole next year. So you and I think, are going to have a lot more to talk about.
That's really cool. I'm excited and looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks, Dennis.
The journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring the wild world of experience creation with us. Each episode offers a new perspective, a fresh story, and another step into the unknown. Stay curious and keep listening. You never know what you might discover next.